don't even know where to start with this. It's been 2 months and I still wake up at like 3 in the morning thinking about it. You know when something just won't leave your head no matter what you do? I keep going over every detail, wondering if I missed something or if I could have done something different. But honestly, I don't think so. So I'm getting divorced, right? The whole thing's a mess, lawyers everywhere, my ex won't stop calling me, crying 1 minute, screaming the next. I just needed to get away from all of it for like a week. Somewhere I could think without everyone asking if I'm okay. Because obviously I'm not okay, but I don't want to talk about it, you know? Found this place on one of those rental apps. Studio apartment in Portland, looked decent in the photos. Host had good reviews, seemed professional in his messages. Price wasn't too bad, which honestly, after paying divorce lawyers, every penny counts. Said it was above some art gallery. Converted loft, exposed brick walls, the whole trendy thing. When I got there, this guy Marcus met me at the door. Seemed normal enough, maybe 30s, kind of quiet but polite. Showed me around real quick, handed me the keys, said he lived next door if I needed anything. Standard stuff. Place looked just like the photos, which was a relief because you never know with these things. First night, I slept like a baby. Best sleep I'd had in months, honestly. Woke up feeling almost human for the first time since this whole divorce thing started. Made coffee, sat by these big windows, watching people walk by, thinking, maybe I could actually figure out what to do with my life. That's when I saw it and my stomach just dropped. There was mail on the kitchen counter. I know I didn't put it there because I'm weird about keeping things clean, especially when I'm staying somewhere that's not mine. Small pile of letters, all addressed to Jennifer Walsh. At first, I'm thinking maybe the mail guy slipped it under the door. Happens sometimes with apartments. But then I really looked at the dates and my hands started getting sweaty. This mail was recent, like from this week, and one of the envelopes was already opened. Not torn like someone was in a hurry, but carefully opened, like someone lives there and this is just their normal mail. Inside was a credit card statement with transactions from Tuesday. It's Thursday. Someone named Jennifer bought groceries 2 days ago, got gas at a station I drove past, bought coffee at a place down the street, but also weird charges like payments to some medical clinic I'd never heard of, pharmacy prescriptions, therapy appointments. My brain started spinning because what the hell is going on here? Am I not supposed to be here? Is there some mistake? But then I found more stuff, like Jennifer's birth control pills in the bathroom cabinet, her antidepressants, her anxiety medication, personal stuff that made me feel sick looking at it. I tried calling Marcus, but it went straight to voicemail. Left this probably panicked-sounding message asking about the mail. Then I decided to go downstairs and ask the gallery owner. Nice older woman, been there forever, she said. When I mentioned Jennifer Walsh, she got this confused look that made my chest tight. Never heard that name, she told me. Said Marcus mentioned the unit would be empty for renovations this month. That's when everything started clicking wrong in my head. If it's supposed to be empty for renovations, why am I here? Why is there fresh mail for someone who apparently doesn't exist? Why does this place feel like someone actually lives here? I spent the whole day going through Jennifer's things because I couldn't help myself. Found her diary hidden under the mattress, bank statements showing direct deposits from some psychiatric research facility, medical records indicating she was part of some clinical trial for experimental treatments. The dates showed she'd been getting treatments right up until last week. That evening, I'm trying to process what I'd found when I hear footsteps on the stairs outside. Heavy boots, taking their time, not like someone rushing home from work. I thought maybe it's Marcus coming to explain about Jennifer. Then I heard keys jingling and my blood turned to ice. The door opens and this woman walks in looking confused and disoriented. Same brunette from the photos I'd found, but something was wrong with her eyes, like she wasn't quite all there. She was wearing hospital scrubs, but they were dirty, like she'd been walking around outside for hours. She sees me and doesn't seem scared, just confused. "Who are you?" she says in this flat voice. "Are you here for the treatment too?" Treatment? My hand started shaking as I realized Jennifer wasn't just a tenant, she was some kind of patient. And this apartment wasn't her home, it was where they kept her between sessions. I asked her what treatment, and she got this blank look like she was trying to remember something important but couldn't quite reach it. The forgetting treatment, she said. Marcus gives me the shots, and then I don't remember the bad things anymore. But sometimes I come back too early and remember bits. That's when I noticed her marks on her arms, little puncture wounds like needle tracks, and the way she kept touching her head like it hurt. She started talking about how she volunteered for this experimental program to help with trauma, how they promised to make her forget the things that kept her awake at night. But something had gone wrong. She was supposed to stay at the facility between treatments, but kept having episodes where she'd remember her apartment and come back. Marcus had been using her confusion to rent out the space whenever she was heavily medicated, making money off someone who couldn't even remember she had rights. She pulled out a bottle of pills and dry swallowed 3 right in front of me. These help with the remembering, she said. If I take enough, the apartment won't feel real anymore and I'll stop coming back. Her voice was getting more distant, like she was fading away. I tried to call the police, but Jennifer grabbed my phone with surprising strength. Please don't, she said. I volunteered for this. I wanted to forget. The treatment works, I just keep fighting it. Her eyes were getting glassy from whatever she'd taken. She told me about the trauma that made her volunteer, about losing her daughter in an accident, about how the guilt was eating her alive. The research facility promised they could selectively erase specific memories, make it so the pain never happened. But the side effects were making her lose everything, not just the bad memories. As the pills kicked in, she started forgetting I was there, started acting like she was alone. She made herself dinner like it was completely normal, took a shower, got ready for bed. Watching her was like watching someone sleepwalk through their own life. In the morning, she was gone. Just vanished, leaving behind only the smell of whatever medication she'd been taking. I called the research facility, whose name I'd found in her paperwork. They said there was no patient named Jennifer Walsh, no experimental program, no record of anything I described. I packed my stuff and left that day. Tried to report Marcus to the rental platform, but they said without proof of wrongdoing, they couldn't take action. Tried to report the research facility, but couldn't find any official records of their existence. 6 months later, I saw Jennifer on the street in downtown Portland. She was standing outside a coffee shop looking confused, like she knew she was supposed to be somewhere but couldn't remember where. When I approached her, she looked right through me like I was a stranger. I still don't know if she's better off forgetting or if what they did to her was worse than the original trauma. Marcus is probably still out there renting that apartment, probably found other patients whose confusion he can exploit, and somewhere there's a facility doing things to people's minds that maybe shouldn't be done, even if they volunteer. This happened in Montana last fall, and I still don't drive mountain roads alone anymore. Still check my mirrors more than I should. I was burned out from work, couldn't handle the city noise anymore, needed to get away from everything. Found this cabin rental that looked perfect, completely isolated. Photos showed this beautiful log house surrounded by pine trees. Host seemed professional enough, answered my questions, said it was on public forest land so I could hike wherever I wanted. Exactly what I needed, just me and nature for a long weekend. The drive took forever, these winding roads that seemed to go on for hours. When I finally found the place, it looked just like the photos, which was a relief. Perfect log cabin, wraparound porch, amazing views. Inside was rustic but comfortable, had everything I needed. No Wi-Fi like they advertised, which was exactly what I wanted. Spent the first evening reading by the fire, listening to wind in the trees. Felt like I could finally breathe again for the first time in months. Next morning, I decided to explore the area. There was this trail behind the cabin that led up into the hills. Maybe half hour into the hike, I see something that stops me dead. Another cabin through the trees, probably 500 yards away. But this one was different. It had solar panels, satellite dish, looked way more modern than mine. I pulled out my binoculars to get a better look, and my stomach dropped. There were people moving around outside, but they weren't dressed like campers or hunters. They were wearing what looked like medical scrubs, carrying equipment, loading stuff into vehicles, and there was a sign I could barely make out that said something about wildlife research. One of them spotted me watching and pointed in my direction. That's when I saw him, this guy in camouflage who came out of the cabin and started looking back at me through his own binoculars. We stared at each other for maybe 30 seconds, and something about it felt wrong, like I'd walked into something I wasn't supposed to see. I packed up quick and headed back to my cabin, kept looking over my shoulder the whole way. That afternoon, I'm trying to read when I hear an engine coming up the road. Through the window, I see a pickup truck driving real slow past mine. My heart started pounding for no reason I could explain. The truck stops and this guy gets out. Same person who'd been watching me from the other cabin, probably 50s, wearing hunting gear and carrying something that made my blood freeze. Not a hunting rifle, but something that looked military, like an assault weapon. He walks up and knocks on my door. When I open it, he smiles, but his eyes are dead cold. "You're staying in the Mitchell place," he says. Not a question, just a statement. "I'm Dale. We run wildlife research up here. Wanted to make sure you understood the boundaries." The way he said boundaries made every hair on my neck stand up. I tried to keep my voice steady, even though my heart was hammering. "What kind of research?" He shifts the weapon to his other hand, still not threatening, but making sure I see it. "Government contract, classified. People who wander into restricted areas sometimes don't make it back." That didn't sound like any wildlife research I'd ever heard of. "I'm just here for the weekend," I managed to say. "Don't plan on hiking much." He nods slow, like he's deciding whether to believe me. Smart, because the last few guests who stayed here, they got curious, had to be relocated. Relocated? Not arrested, not escorted out. Relocated? What the hell did that mean? After he left, I tried calling the host, but my phone had no signal. Spent the rest of the day feeling like there were eyes on me from the trees. Every sound made me jump. That night, I couldn't sleep, kept hearing vehicles moving around in the distance, voices carrying through the forest, sounds like heavy equipment running. Around 3 in the morning, I saw lights moving through the trees. Not flashlights, but something bigger, like floodlights on vehicles. I crept to the window and saw a convoy of black SUVs driving past my cabin toward the research facility. But these weren't government vehicles. They had no markings, tinted windows, looked more like private military. Whatever they were doing up there, it wasn't official wildlife research. In the morning, I packed while it was still dark, wanted to get out before anyone noticed. As I drove down the mountain, I passed a checkpoint I hadn't seen coming up. 2 guys in tactical gear flagged me down, asked for ID, wanted to know what I'd seen during my stay. I lied and said I'd stayed inside the whole time, just wanted to read and relax. They let me go, but I could see them writing down my license plate, probably running my information. When I got cell service back, I tried researching the area, but found almost nothing online about any research facility. What I did find were missing person reports. Hikers who disappeared in that region over the past few years, hunters who went out and never came back, even a few journalists who'd been investigating something in the area before they vanished. All the reports mentioned the victims were last seen near the same general coordinates. I tried reporting what I had seen to the Forest Service, but they said they had no record of any government research in that area. When I mentioned the checkpoint and the armed guards, they got real quiet, said they'd look into it, but warned me not to talk to anyone else about what I experienced. That was 8 months ago, and I never heard back from them. The rental listing disappeared, but I found what looked like the same cabin listed under different names in other states. Same photos, same layout, just different locations. When I tried to report them, the platform said they couldn't verify it was the same property. I still wonder what they were really doing up there in those mountains. What kind of research requires military weapons and black SUVs? What happened to the guests who got too curious, the ones who had to be relocated? And whether that checkpoint is still there, whether Dale and his team are still disappearing people who see too much. Sometimes I get paranoid that they tracked me down, that they know I reported them. Every unknown number that calls, every car that follows too close. I wonder if it's connected to what I witnessed. Because whatever they were protecting wasn't wildlife research, and people who threatened to expose it seem to have a habit of vanishing without a trace.
I can't stay alone anywhere anymore after what happened. Keep seeing those eyes staring at me every time I close mine. This was about 4 months ago, right after my breakup when I needed space to think. I found this beach house rental in Oregon, perfect for walking on sand and figuring out my life. The place looked amazing online, right on the water, great reviews, decent price. Host named Kevin seemed friendly in our messages, said he lived nearby and to call if I needed anything. When I got there, the house was exactly what I needed. Big windows facing the ocean, private deck, peaceful. Kevin met me at the door, showed me around, seemed like a nice guy. Maybe early 40s, soft-spoken. Said to text if anything wasn't working. First few days were perfect. Long beach walks, reading on the deck, simple meals. Starting to feel human again for the first time in months. Kevin texted once, asking if everything was okay, which I thought was nice. Right amount of host attention, not too much. Then, on the 4th day, something happened that made my skin crawl. I'd left my coffee mug on the counter before my morning walk. When I came back an hour later, it was in the dishwasher, clean and put away. But it wasn't just clean. It was positioned exactly like all the other dishes, like someone had a system for how things should be arranged. And there was a faint smell in the air like someone had been cooking recently, but I hadn't used the stove that morning. That evening, I found a bottle of expensive wine on the counter with a note saying, "Hope you're enjoying your stay, K." But when I looked closer at the handwriting, it was different from the messages Kevin had sent me. Shakier, like someone trying to disguise their normal writing. I texted Kevin to thank him and ask if he'd been in the house. He said he'd stop by to drop off wine as a welcome gift. Didn't want to disturb me, so he used his key. But then he asked what I'd been doing that morning, what time I'd gone for my walk, if I'd talked to anyone on the beach. Why would he care about those details? The next morning I woke up and my bed was made perfectly, but I also noticed my clothes had been moved. My suitcase was organized differently, like someone had been going through my things. In the bathroom, my toothbrush was wet, even though I hadn't used it yet. And there were strands of hair in the sink that weren't mine. I called Kevin right away, probably sounding panicked. He seemed surprised and concerned, said he'd come check for break-in signs. But when he arrived, he had keys to every lock in the house, including ones I didn't even know existed. He walked through like he'd memorized the layout, touching things in ways that seemed too familiar. That's when I noticed the photos on his phone when he was checking something. Pictures of the house from different angles, but they weren't listing photos. These were recent, taken from inside while someone was staying there. I could see personal belongings in the background, women's clothes, suitcases, things that belonged to guests. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept checking locks and listening for sounds. Around 3 in the morning, I heard footsteps on the deck outside, but also something else. The sound of drilling, like someone was making holes in the walls. I grabbed my phone and crept to the window. Kevin was on my deck with a small power drill, making tiny holes near the bedroom window. When he finished, he inserted something that looked like a fiber optic cable, threading it through the wall. Then he pulled out a tablet and I could see he was testing some kind of feed, adjusting the angle until he had a clear view inside. I watched him install 3 more cameras around the house, all hidden in places you'd never notice unless you knew exactly where to look. Then he sat in one of the deck chairs and started reviewing footage on his tablet, scrolling through what looked like hours of video of me sleeping, showering, getting dressed. The worst part was seeing him fast forward through the recordings, stopping at specific moments, zooming in on certain shots. He'd been filming me since I arrived, building some kind of collection, and based on the number of files on his device, I wasn't the first. When he finally left, I was too scared to move until sunrise. I packed everything and tried to leave, but my car wouldn't start. The engine would turn over, but something was wrong, like someone had tampered with it. I was trapped there with Kevin, knowing I'd seen him install the cameras. I called for a rideshare, but Kevin showed up before they arrived. This time he didn't pretend to be concerned. "You saw something you shouldn't have," he said calmly. "That makes things complicated." His whole demeanor had changed, like he'd dropped a mask he'd been wearing. He showed me his tablet with all the footage he'd collected, not just of me, but dozens of other women who'd stayed at the house. Some of the videos were date-stamped going back years. He'd been running this operation for a long time, renting the solo female travelers and documenting their most private moments. "This is my hobby," he said. "These women come here thinking they're safe, thinking they have privacy, but they're performing for me whether they know it or not. And now you're part of the collection permanently." The way he said permanently made my blood freeze. My rideshare arrived and Kevin didn't try to stop me from leaving, just smiled and said he'd be in touch. During the drive to the airport, I kept thinking about all those other women in his videos, wondering if they knew they'd been recorded, if he'd contacted them afterwards like he was planning to do with me. 3 weeks later, the packages started arriving at my apartment. Photos of me from my stay, but also new ones taken outside my workplace, my gym, my apartment building. Always from far away, but close enough to show he was tracking my movements, learning my routine. I've moved twice since then, but Kevin keeps finding me. The photos prove he's always watching, always documenting. Police say they can't help without direct threats, and Kevin is careful to never write anything explicitly threatening. But the photos keep coming, and they're getting more invasive. Last week, it was a picture taken through my new apartment window while I was sleeping. He had somehow gotten close enough to shoot through a gap in my curtains. I'm starting to think moving isn't enough, that he's not going to stop until he has complete control over my life. The worst part is knowing about all those other women in his collection, wondering if they're still being stalked like I am, if some of them just disappeared when they became too much trouble. And realizing that to Kevin, I'm not a person, just another subject in his ongoing documentary about women who thought they could be safe alone.